Hello BookTube, it's Joshua here, and today is Poetry Thursday, so I'm going to do some readings for you. I was gonna film this video earlier today, but I had some things to do today, so I'm filming it now. It may be that you guys will only see this on Friday or much later tonight, but I have prepared four different poems for you guys. One of them's a bit longer, and I'm really excited to share it with you. I think I've read most of these poets on this channel before, but I don't think I've read these specific poems on the channel before. So I'm excited to show it to you. The first poet is Seamus Heaney, and a certain booktuber asked about Seamus Heaney volumes or editions, and this is the one that I own. It's called Open to Ground, and it's his selected poems from 1966 to 1996. And I believe, just off the top of my head, I could be misremembering, but I believe Heaney passed away in 2012 or around there. And I'm not sure how many books this misses out on. I'm not sure if it misses out on some of his later books, but this is like a solid 400 pages, and it's a pretty meaty selection. It takes from, I would assume, all of his individual poetry books, and it takes let's see, it takes about a dozen poems from his first book, Death of a Naturalist, and then another dozen from his second book, titled Door into the Dark, and then it takes even more from his third book, Wintering Out. It takes like a solid 20 poems from there. So it's a really meaty selection. I'm going to read you one poem titled Serenades. So here it is. The Irish nightingale is a sedge warbler, a little bird with a big voice kicking up a racket all night. Not what you'd expect from the musical nation. I haven't even heard one, nor an owl for that matter. My serenades have been the broken voice of a crow in a draft or a dream, the wheeze of bats, or the ack-ack of the tramp corncrake, lost in a no-man's land between combines and chemicals. So fill the bottles, love. Leave them inside their cots, and if they do wake us, well, so would the sedge warbler. And so that was the poem. I chose this poem partly because I saw Joe Spivey's Poetry Thursday video about John Keats today, and the mention of Nightingale reminded me of Keats's Ode to a Nightingale, which Joe didn't read, but I just think it's a kind of interesting contrast to if you were to read Keats's Ode to a Nightingale and then read this. The Irish nightingale is a sedge warbler, a little bird with a big voice kicking up a racket all night. It's such a difference in tone from one to the other, that it's kind of just interesting to see that contrast. But yeah, that's the one poem by Heaney here. And the second poem is a much longer one. But I've just been reading this. I read this yesterday, and I read it again today, and it's such a, I love the poem so much. I just want to share it with you guys. It's such a touching poem, and also a really complex poem. It's by James Merrill. I have this really nice edition here. This is his collected poems, and I took off the jacket because whenever I hold this book, the jacket always slips. It goes up, and I just got so annoyed. I took it off, and so you have this really nice cloth bound hardcover thing. The poem is called Chimes for Yahya. It's separated into 9 sections, and so it's about 4 pages long. So this will be the longest poem in the video. If you don't want to watch it, feel free to skip. But it's a narrative poem. It starts off with James Merrill in Greece. Merrill had a home in Greece, and apparently, and this is something that's completely new to me. Apparently, in Greece, there's a tradition, maybe a couple days before Christmas, called ecstasy, or called the ecstasy, where essentially children, Greek children, will go around to houses and they'll get like a triangle, or they'll get bells and they'll ring it and they'll chant some kind of verse in the Greek language, and in response, the people will give them coins, and so I think that's still a tradition today. So it starts off with that image, um, and it's kind of a rather humorous image, and we'll get to that. I'll read the whole thing to you, but then James Merrill, in the second part of the poem, suddenly remembers a childhood memory, and then somehow connects that to the rest of the story, where in the rest of the story is essentially him traveling to Isfahan, um, where he stays with a guest who's the prince of a tribe there, and it's just a really beautiful story. So I'm gonna read it to you, and there's all kinds of, there are 9 sections of the poem, and there are all kinds of resonances from each section. Um, the key theme, or the key motif, being chimes, or bells. So I'll start. Imperiously ringing, natapum, shall we tell it? 2 dressy little girls inquire. They mean some chanted verse to do with Christmas, which big homemade iron triangles drown out, and at least coin silences. But oh, not at 7 in the morning, if you please. And slam, the frosted glass spares me their tidings, and themselves farther inspection of the foreigner, grizzled and growling in his flannel robe. All day children will be prowling loose, eager to tell what the angels said. So, having gagged the mechanism with a towel, washed hands and face, put on a kettle, but bells keep ringing in my head. Downhill, too, where priests pace in black dresses, chignons and hats like Chekhov's governesses. Their toy church on a whole block of bare earth in central Athens, what it must be worth, clangs like a locomotive. Well, good Lord, why not? Tomorrow's Christmas, all aboard. 2. Another memory of Mademoiselle. We're in a Pullman going south for Christmas, she in the lower berth, I in the upper, as befits whatever station we pass through. Lanterns finger our compartment walls. At one stop, slipping down into her dream, I lift the blind an inch. Outside, some blanketed black figures from a creche, part king, part shepherd, part donkey, stamp and steam, gliding from sight as rapturous bells ring. Mummy and Daddy have gone ahead by sleigh, Packard, piled with gifts I know too well. Night after autumn night, Mademoiselle, yielding to endearments, bringing down from the attic, lion by tiger, acrobat by clown, tamer with her little whips and hoops, the very circus of my wildest hopes. I've seen it, memorized it all. Choo-choo goes the train towards the déjà vu. Christmas morning, in a mandarin suit, pigtail and fan and pipe already staled by the imaginary stuff inhaled. I mimed astonishment, but who was fooled? The treasure lay outspread beneath the tree, pitiful its delusive novelty. A present far behind me in a sense, and this has been a problem ever since. 3. While I carry tea up to the terrace, the day is ravishingly mild and fair. 30 years pass. My train of thought stalls near a certain tunnel's end, despair lit by far-off daylight. Isfahan. Change of scene that might, I thought, be tried first instead of outright suicide. Looked back on now, what caused my sufferings? Mere thwarted passion, commonest of things. I had been shown into a freezing room belonging to a man I didn't know. What does that matter? Simply go, the friend of friends had said. These friends of friends were better company that year than real ones. Surrendering his letter with my shoes was taking what cold comfort one can take when one's heart is breaking on the carpet. The carpet? Carpet overlapping carpet, threadbare, opulent. Enormous carpet-covered cushions. On the wall, a carpet portrait of an old, forbidding man, correct in carpet cutaway, tarbouche and deep white pile mustache. My host's grandfather, as I would learn, who founded the carpet works. Rose trees in such bloom they looked unreal, odorless also, or had I caught cold, stood in the four corners. Nearby squatted a brazier wheezing like a bronchitic old bulldog, ash-white, garnet-eyed. Smoke curled, cartings from the comb of light between me and a courtyard still in shadow. A well, a flowering tree, one tethered goat, her face both smug and martyred, giving suck to a white puppy's warm, incarnate mess of instincts only the pure in heart confess. Back and forth, grimly eyebrowed under shawls, humans passed jacketed in sheepskin. Was that a gentle summons from within? The person entering, as I made to rise, sketched a rapid, unrepeatable gesture, perfectly explicit. I, it said, am an old retainer. By these eyes, I would not have you see me otherwise, unless you care to sample my poor graces, lamp-black and henna, on a hazier basis. Kneeling, he arranges full black trousers to hide his striped socks full of holes, and fusses with the kettle on the coals. 4. Ah, you have met Hussein, the gentle voice just heard says at my shoulder. There, in your corduroy jumpsuit, nodding a foulard of camouflage greens and browns, you are. You are no older or younger than I've pictured you, no handsomer, no simpler, only kinder. Lover, warrior, invalid, and sage, amused, unenvious of one another, meet in your face. Hussein pours cups too full. Our friend is fidgeting, temper his pipe. You don't object? I used to smoke myself, before my father died and I became, what, the prince, the chieftain of our tribe? We're smiling, but it's serious. One belongs to the working class of prince. The feuds alone. Tribesmen at one's gates, from miles away, needing a doctor or a judgment. Summers, though. We all live their life, high in the foothills, a world you wouldn't dream. Perhaps one day. Meanwhile, Hussein, positioning the tar pearl upon his cloudy blue-green globe, applies a coal, is sucking peacefully at the long polished stem. Peculiar sweetness, so I can smell, fills the air. As for the roses, you apologize. Roses in Isfahan don't bloom till May. These are imitation from Times Square. 5. You kept me by you all that day. I never had to think why I was there. Figures materialized, obeyed, unraveled. One man brought you his smooth breast like an heirloom to unwrap, to probe and dress. Hussein brought omelets, brandy, cake, fruit, lamb. A barber shaved you. A tall blonde from Berkeley, Gloria, doing field work in the tribe, got asked back that evening for dinner. After she left, or don't you like the company of your compatriots? I liked whatever you would ask me to. Wanted to get so many lines a week of you by heart. Would want tomorrow, when, to senses sharpened by the pipe shared with Hussein once you had gone to bed, jets of rigid color, the great mosque, rose from a pure white carpet, snow lights flowing through every vein and duct. would want to spend one lifetime there as a divinity student niched in shallowest faience, Pilaf steaming while the slow air dried his turban's green outfloating prayer. Had there perhaps already been lives at your side? A paperback I read compares the soul to a skimmed stone touching the waters of the world at points along a curve. Atlantis, Rome, Versailles, where friends arranged to be reborn together. Absurd? No more than Freud or chemistry to explain the joy, the jolt that had set wheels rolling toward some vapor-tasseled view, and, incidentally, away from you. 6. Not a year later, ink blue stains would spell the worst. A letter of Hussein's. A boyhood skirmish, a word-blotted slug lodged in your skull, which finally must. Prince, that the perennial gift, remember, unroll another time beneath your feet. That, red with liability to bloom and blow, the rose abstainer of your loom quicken a pattern ever incomplete. Dear Prince in whom I put my trust, away with pipe and ember, the real thing's dark and malleable drug. Withdrawal rendering, as we know, more strict our buried craving for the habit kicked. 7. Dinner was over. Hussein spoke in your ear. You nodded him away. We drained our beer. Gloria went right on theorizing about relationships within the tribe I now appeared to be a member of. Dressed by you in the black ballooning trousers, white vest, coarse sherbet-colored shirt, and brimless derby hat your people wore. I wore them here once during carnival with burnt cork eyebrows. Nobody was fooled. Time for a highball? But a piercing scream somewhere in the household interrupted our flow of spirits. What on earth? Ah, it's too tiresome, you sighed. These mountain women will give birth under one's roof. They wait until their labor is so far advanced we've no way to prepare. The girl from Berkeley lit up like a flare. In 2 whole years I've told and told you, never seen a childbirth. Can't we just... You shook your head. Ah, no. The stranger brings bad luck, we think. Best let her be. A doctor? No. Hussein knows an old woman. He's gone to fetch her. But I must. Think of my thesis, Yahya. Let me, please. Gloria had risen to her knees. Counterpoint of screams and argument, making you disdainfully relent. All right, but quietly, into your coats. And into the cold courtyard black with goats. Across, a glimmering shutter stood ajar. Come and go of oil lamps, moans and shadows. As far as we could tell on tiptoe, there in the small room's dissolving shabbiness lay this veiled figure writhing on a carpet. Gloria found the bench. I climbed beside her. Elbows on sill, we presently were staring while you chuckled back against the wall, staring like solemn oxen from a stall upon the mystery. Wow, breathed Gloria. Smell that smell. They gave her opium. Women were chanting. The midwife had come. Maternal invocations and convulsions reaching a pitch. Did I detect in all that pain an element of play? You also seemed convulsed. With laughter. Why? Reaching a pitch, an infant's feeble cry from underneath dark swallings clove the night. These totteringly picked themselves erect, made for Gloria. Into her credulous outstretched arms laid, not a wriggling white puppy. Horrors twinkled through the brain. Then the proud mother bared her face. Hussein. 8. Cooling tea and clouding day. Over the neighborhood prevailing bells, triangles, tuneless treble voices of children one imagines. Little boys whose rooster tessitura, plus ça change, will crow above the cradle of a son. Little girls, each with her Christmas doll, like hens a china egg is slipped beneath. Voices so familiar by now, it might as well be silence that I sit in, reliving romps with my animal nature. It's ecstasy knocking me over. Off the leash at last, or out of the manger at least. Tongue, paw, and pelt, loyal, fearless heart, the vipers it saved us from. Unlikeness to myself I knelt, embracing. Times, too, it turned on me, or on another. Squawks, feathers, until the rolled-up times imposed obedience. Now by its own scale, older than I am, stodgy, apprehensive, for all I know, of what must soon, yet trustful, setting blurred sights on me still. What were 5 or 6 half-playful bites? Deep, no doubt, but the pain so long forgiven, it might as well be pleasure I rise in, grazing music as I do so. My bells, silent all this while, my camel bells from Isfahan. Their graduated brass pendant hangs on the awning frame, discolored shades of dully wintering oleander. Verdigris on fingertip and sleeve do wet, to make them ring together, reach down for the smallest, shake. A tingling spine of tone, or waterfall crashing pure and chill, bell within bell, upward to the 9th and mellowest. Their changes mingle with the parish best, their told tale with the children's doggerel. And that's the poem. That's the entire poem. That went on for a while, didn't it? Oh my gosh. I find James Merrill's verse to be, frequently just so pleasurable to read on a line-by-line basis, because he's always amazing at rhyme. He's always, he always has such a playfulness with words. There were probably like a million puns in there that went over my head. I'd also find it difficult. When I was first reading this, I had to look up probably 20 different words. But he has such a flair for storytelling. It's really, I love James Merrill's poetry. He might be my favorite poet of all time. But the next poem I'm going to read to you is another poem. There's another poet that I featured on this channel before. It is Elizabeth Bishop's Roosters. The title of the poem is called Roosters. And this is going to be a very long video. I'm not expecting you guys to watch the whole thing, but feel free to skip to wherever you want. This poem is called Roosters. It is, let's see, it is about one, two, three, another 4 pages, but it's short. It's shorter than the Merrill poem. And yeah, I'll just read it to you right now. At 4 o'clock, in the gunmetal blue dark, we hear the first crow of the first cock, just below the gunmetal blue window, and immediately there is an echo off in the distance. Then one from the backyard fence, then one with horrible insistence, grates like a wet match from the broccoli patch, flares, and all over town begins to catch. Cries galore come from the water closet door, from the dropping plastered henhouse floor, where in the blue blur the rustling wives admire. The roosters brace their cruel feet and glare with stupid eyes, while from their beaks there rise the uncontrolled traditional cries. Deep from protruding chests in green and gold medals dressed, plan to command and terrorize the rest, the many wives who lead hens' lives of being courted and despised. Deep from raw throats a senseless order floats all over town. The rooster gloats over our beds, from rusty iron sheds and fences made from old bedsteads, over our churches where the tin rooster perches, over our little wooden northern houses, making sallies from all the muddy alleys, marking out maps like Rand McNally's. Glass-headed pins, oil golds and copper greens, anthracite blues, alizarins, each one in active displacement and perspective, each screaming, "This is where I live." Each screaming, "Get up, stop dreaming." Roosters, what are you projecting? You, whom the Greeks elected to shoot at on a post, who struggled when sacrificed, you whom they labeled very combative, what right have you to give commands and tell us how to live, cry here and here, and wake us here where are unwanted love, conceit, and war? The crown of red set on your little head is charged with all your fighting blood. Yes, that excrescence makes a most viral presence, plus all that vulgar beauty of iridescence. Now in mid-air, by twos they fight each other. Down comes a first flame feather, and one is flying, with raging heroism defying even the sensation of dying. And one has fallen, but still above the town his torn-out, bloodied feathers drift down. And what he sung no matter. He is flung on the grey ash heap, lies in dung with his dead wives, with open, bloody eyes, while those metallic feathers oxidize. St. Peter's sin was worse than that of Magdalene, whose sin was of the flesh alone. Of spirit, Peter's, falling beneath the flares among the servants and officers. Old holy sculpture could set it all together in one small scene, past and future. Christ stands amazed. Peter, two fingers raised to surprised lips, both as if dazed. But in between a little cock is seen, carved on a dim column in the travertine, explained by Gallus Canet, flat Petrus underneath it. There is inescapable hope, the pivot. Yes, and there Peter's tears run down our chanticleer's sides and gem his spurs. Tear-encrusted thick as a medieval relic he waits. Poor Peter, heart-sick, still cannot guess those cockadoodles yet might bless his dreadful rooster come to mean forgiveness. A new weather vane on basilica and barn, and that outside the Lateran there would always be a bronze cock on a porphyry pillar, so the people and the Pope might see that even the prince of the apostles long since had been forgiven, and to convince all the assembly that deny is not all the roosters cry. In the morning, a low light is floating in the backyard and gliding from underneath the broccoli, leaf by leaf. How could the night have come to grief? Gilding the tiny floating swallow's belly and lines of pink cloud in the sky, the day's preamble like wandering lines in marble. The cocks are now almost inaudible. The sun climbs in, following to see the end, faithful as enemy or friend. So that was Roosters. I find it to be a very moving poem. There's that section near the end where Bishop talks about St. Peter. And I actually know, I know the story now because I followed Steve Donahue's New Testament read-through. Yeah, I find it to be very moving. There were these words, but in between a little cock is seen, carved on a dim column in the travertine, explained by Gallus Canet, flat Petrus underneath it. And I think those words are Latin words, and I think it means something like the crow, what would you call it? I don't know. The crow sang and Peter fled. But then it talks about how roosters at the end can actually mean forgiveness. So I really like that poem. And lastly, to continue with the theme of Christianity, or of incorporating elements of Christianity into a poem, this is a poet that I've been reading named Eavan Boland, or I'm not sure if I'm exactly pronouncing that name correctly, but she's an Irish poet, or I believe she passed away just recently, in 2022 or something like that. But she's an Irish poet that who I just recently discovered. She often writes from a feminist point of view, and her poems are just really, really delightful. Here's one poem called Hymn. Hymn as in Hymn. 4 a.m. December. A lamb would perish out there. The cutlery glitter of that sky has nothing in it I want to follow. Here is the star of my nativity, a nursery lamp in a suburb window, behind which is boiled glass, a bottle and a baby, all hisses like a kettle. The light goes out. The blackbird takes up his part. I wake by habit. I know it all by heart. These candles and the altar and psaltery of dawn, and in the dark, as we slept, the world was made flesh. So that was the poem, a shorter one, perhaps mercifully, because I this video is already at half an hour, but I really like this poem because it takes so many, I think, elements or motifs or themes of Christianity, and kind of turns them on their head, and just kind of transforms them into almost like a personal religion, or it transforms those elements of the religion into just the narrator's content with this domestic scene, and that domestic scene is her with her baby, a nursery lamp in a suburb window. That becomes the kind of altar instead of an actual religious altar. So I really like that poem. But that is all for today. That's half an hour of me reading poetry and mumbling somewhat incoherently about it. So yeah, thank you for, if you're still here at the end of this video, thank you for watching, and goodbye.